Welcome to the Chelsey Home podcast. I am Chelsey Home, your host, and I don't know why I'm talking in a radio announcer voice, but I am. This is your bonus episode. I know I told you we're going to be talking about emotional and spiritual intimacy. That is coming up next. But for now, I want to share what's going on behind the scenes, pulling back the curtains at the work we're doing inside High Level Wife, and specifically with one of my one-on-one clients. Our program is a 16-week transformation program that has a course that goes along with it, right? Every week there's like 2 to 3 lessons, videos that you watch, homework, action steps, and there's a weekly check-in form for accountability every week. And then we have a group coaching call every single week where people can, we coach through. It's a whole thing, right? It's amazing community of women who are being so vulnerable and being so willing to come alongside each other and to really hold the mirror up to themselves and challenge the areas of their heart that they haven't yet. And the wins that are coming out of this is just, it's blowing my mind. It's amazing. And so last night I had the opportunity to...
You didn't do this. It's a question.
Why? What exactly are you doing?
It's a problem.
Yeah, but why?
Okay.
No. What are you doing?
it?
Don't be
Mom,
downloading
you got
stuff.
it.
Yeah, but don't be downloading stuff, okay?
Okay. We're just not gonna download it.
Okay. So last night I had the awesome privilege of walking one of my clients through our inner child exercise. And this has been about a month and a half coming because this client has experienced such depths of trauma that most people have never even come close to experiencing. And so this inner work was very deep, very messy, very heavy, right? Exhausting. But let me just tell you, we walked through this process and I knew exactly, okay, well maybe not at the time, but afterwards in reflection, right? So it was a late night call and then I couldn't sleep in bed because it was just so exciting. But in reflection, I could just see the Holy Spirit working through all of it and bringing the healing and the wholeness that this woman so desperately needed. Revealing the stories and the belief systems that served her to protect her at one time in the best way she knew possible, but that is no longer protecting her, being released. In the vision that God gave her through this whole process, and the visuals that he gave her through this, just amazing. As I was doing some follow-up coaching with her today, and we're talking through this process, in the aftermath, and of course some doubt comes up, right? And I can liken it to, salvation, right? How often are people like, oh, well, maybe I should pray the prayer again because what if it didn't work, right? What if it didn't catch? What if it didn't take hold? Should I go back? Should we revisit this exercise? Should we walk through it again? And I just very directly and just felt like the Holy Spirit was telling me, no, God put a period on this and we're not going to go back and revisit it because you got your release through this, right? Now, does that mean that now we just move on our merry little way? Absolutely not, right? Because what happens is when we do this kind of inner work, what we're doing is we're creating more space for our emotions, our memories to process through these things, through these internal workings. And what happens when we create this space and then we release certain things, well, now it can feel like there's a lot of empty space that we're still holding and we don't know what to do with it. And our brains are wired to stay with what we know, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not serving us and where we want to go. And so it's very easy for us to be like, to almost recoil and to make the space smaller again so that we can move back into the comfort of the known discomfort. Right? And we can't do that. And so what I coached her on was, nope, we're going to stand strong and we're going to hold this space for your emotions, right? We're going to take it slow. We're going to process through the exercise, right? We're not going to go back and do it again, right? We're just going to process through some of the things you saw, some of the things that, went along with it, whatever. Like, we're going to talk through these things. We're going to explore the emotions that came up. We're going to, again, continue with the period that God put on this, and we're not going to allow the enemy or our old belief systems to pull us back into that smaller space, right? So we're going to stand strong and we're going to hold this space for ourselves. And, one of her biggest fears was reverting back to years past where she didn't feel like she had control over herself emotionally. And she just felt very out of control. And, as what I told her was, think about a flower or a tree, right, that grows out of a seed, out of the ground, to whatever size they are. It can't ungrow. It can't decide, I don't like life up here. I'm going to go back into my shell and I'm going to ungrow myself. That's not how it works as a human, right? We don't we can't unknow something, right? Like, someone could teach us that, we might have things that no longer serve us, or we might have things that need to be taken apart, right? Because they're no longer serving us, but we can't ungrow. Like, there's no going backwards. My dad always said that, life is like you're in a canoe on a river. You're either intentionally moving in a direction because you're, paddling, or, you've decided you're going that direction, or you're going with the current. Like, there's no sitting still, and growth is like that. My most popular episode to this day is still, if you're not growing, you're dying. Okay? But we're growing. And so I just encouraged her that, you're not going to ungrow yourself and go back into your seed, right? Like, no. And it was so cool. Like, this is what I wanted to share with you. Like, and God putting the period on this and giving her that vision of release was at the end of this, because it was a very emotional experience. Like, we pulled our husband into just to be that solid, like, in person, like, right there, real, tangible point of comfort and safety and security, right? And that was, I'm so glad that I prompted her to do that, because these were such heavy things that we were dealing with, and very emotional and very hurtful and very traumatic, right? Yeah, like, just to see her go through just this extremely emotional process, and and to hold that space. Like, that's what I do as a coach. Like, I hold the space for people to do the messy inner work so that we can move forward, right? A lot of times people just want the horse, or no, people just want the cart things. Getting the cart before the horse, right? Yeah. So they just want to focus on the things like, well, how do I communicate better, right? Like, how do I show up and initiate more? Like, how do we make our sex better? Like, how all these, like, minor things that are like indicator lights, but they're not actual root issues, right? They're just like the symptoms that we're seeing and that we're trying to address, but we're not actually getting to the root issue, right? And so this whole exercise was so powerful for her and so necessary, right? So necessary, because if you have a seeping wound and you just keep putting band-aids on it, but you don't actually address the fact that something's infected, you might be able to mitigate the spread of it, but you're not actually healing it. And so that's why this was so necessary. And this is necessary for every single woman, right? We all have little T's, little traumas, right? Big traumas. Yep, all of us, right? We all have this inner child work that we need to do in order to free us from the inner conflict that we experience on a daily basis, right? Because the belief systems no longer serve us in the direction that we're wanting to go, and that God is calling us to go so that He can use us for His glory and the good of others, right? He's going to use for good what the enemy meant for evil. And so, like, this was so powerful for her and so necessary, because in order for her to have the depth of intimacy that she is wanting and her husband is wanting in their marriage, like, they have a good, if not great, marriage, right? But they have some reoccurring frustrations that stem from this hurt that she experienced at a very young age and onward. And, you know, it's just like, it's just amazing to me. Like, we live in a world, right? The postmodern world, where we want things, we want them now, and we don't want to wait. And we're very much, I mean, you could go order anything you want and, you know, it could be here by tomorrow, right? For the most part. Food, we could order something and go get it immediately. We could go somewhere and get something immediately. Like, I'm sure we could go to any number of places and get a loan at any point, right? Of who knows what the interest rate is going to be. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we can get things right away, right? Like, we don't have to wait to go to the bank to get cash. We have a card that goes with us anywhere we go, right? So we have this very, like, instant gratification society. And so when we're talking about this work, it can be really challenging because it's a process, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. It takes a lot of emotions. And like, if you ever think of, like, different jobs, like, there's a difference between a physically demanding job and an emotionally demanding job, right? And I've worked both. And I will tell you, I always felt way more exhausted than a physically demanding job or physically demanding work. Emotionally draining things are very challenging unless we know how to create the space for ourselves, hold it, and be able to expand into this more expansive version of ourselves, right? Like, this more expanded, not even version, but like just this bigger expansion of ourselves and how God's growing us past it, right? And so at the end, I asked her, you know, and I wasn't sure. And I asked her, you know, we got to the end where it's like, okay, we're going to come back and we're going to open our eyes. And so I asked her, I said, how are you feeling right now? She was like, I feel good. And I just, in that moment, like, just overwhelmingly, like, just that confirmation of, like, oh my gosh, God did this. We put legs on that prayer and we did the work and we created the space and we invited the Holy Spirit in. But God did this. He brought the period, right? He released the things. He brought the wholeness and the healing, right? He stood in the space that we created for Him to do the work that only He could do. And she had to be willing, though, and she was. And just to get to that point on the other side, because this is something she's been dreading. Like, anytime we would talk about any kind of inner child work, she would immediately have a physical reaction because the body remembers, right? The body remembers what the mind wants to not remember. And then we do everything we possibly can to ignore, but it's still there, and we feel it because our body responds, right? Sweaty palms, racing heart, shortness of breath, tightness in our chest, weird feelings in our gut, right? Like, any number of things tell us that there's something deeper going on here. But she had the courage to actually face it head on, right? And we brought in her husband because, you know, that gave her more comfort, especially with doing it virtually, right? Because I wasn't there physically with her. You know, but, like, this is what a high-level wife is. This is someone who is so committed to her faith and loving the Lord and having an amazing, exceptional, high-level marriage that the Lord is using, is willing to do the very heavy, scary, unknown inner work, right? Is willing to move past the way that her body is physically responding, to hold space for it and do the work that needs to be done. That is courageous. That is vulnerable. That is what a high-level wife is. And this is the work we're doing inside High Level Wife, right? She's one of my one-on-one coaching clients, so we're doing this one-on-one. But everyone else who is in the group coaching program is walking through these things in the course, right? So obviously it's manual, it's self-led. It's not self-led, it's led by me in the lesson, right? But not as deeply as we were able to go with her last night because, right, it's real time, it's live, it's, Holy Spirit leading this moment. So yeah, I had to share this story with you because there's probably something in your life that God is waiting for you to invite him in to create the space and to be willing to do the work so that he can put a period on something for you and bring that wholeness and healing that you've so longed for but couldn't have yet, right? Yet. And you've been walking around feeling like you're carrying this weight. Like for me, it felt like carrying this wet blanket over my head. It was me, but it was like this weighed down, burdened version of me because of these belief systems that I had created based on different experiences throughout my life, as young as a little girl. And, they weren't serving me anymore where I was. And the inner work has led to just being so much more in tune, being able to be present with my family, being able to be relaxed, to move at this natural pace like Jesus moved at, right? You didn't see him hustling around and checking off his to-do list. And I still have a to-do list, but my to-do list doesn't run me. I run my to-do list, and that is informed by the Holy Spirit and rooted in how he wants me to set up my day. And I'll tell you, it is so anti-society's ways to live in this relaxed, peaceful, just fulfilled life. It goes against this world, and that's the Jesus way. And that's possible for you. And that's what we're doing inside High Level Wife. So if you want to learn more about High Level Wife, all the information is in the show notes. Whether you're interested in group coaching or you want to look at one-on-one group coaching so you have a more personal, intimate experience like this where I come alongside you and help you through this work, we can do that. Just book a call. I love being able to walk you through what it looks like, and all the details and answer all your questions and honestly see if it's a good fit for you, because it's not for everybody, right? Anybody can do it. Anybody can be called to do it, but not everyone is going to do it, and that's just the case. And so I always offer the free discovery call just because I feel like there's a hair on my hand. I don't know where it's coming from. Anyway, just because I like to get on discovery calls because I want to get to know you. I want you to get to know me a little better. Obviously, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know me sort of, right? But I love that face-to-face. I love being able to see if we're a good fit, because if we're not, I don't want you coaching with me and you don't want to be coaching with me, right? And you don't want to be taking my program if you don't jive with me. So those are all things that we explore. And so check out the show notes. Book a call if you want to. And I will be back next time talking about emotional and spiritual intimacy in marriage. It's always going to be, it's a hot topic, right? I know for we as women, we tend to feel so much more connected when we have the emotional and spiritual piece versus men as a whole, right? Not everyone, but as a majority, it's more of the sexual piece, right? And so we're going to be talking about what that looks like, and specifically too, like, what do you do if your spouse is immature when it comes to emotional and spiritual health, right? How do you navigate that as a high level wife? Well, we're going to dive into all that. I'll see you next time.